I often get asked if I was starting from zero without any reputation, any skills, how I would go from $0 to $10,000 per month in the fastest time period possible. Most of our clients are doing north of $100,000 per month and partner with us to scale to $1 million a month plus. But in this video, I want to kind of service and speak to the percentage of my following that is doing substantially less than that is trying to get started to try and crack into entrepreneurship and find success and find financial independence. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Sam Sauter. My partners and I scaled our digital marketing agency past $1.4 million per year in cash collected. We manage hundreds of thousands of dollars per month profitably across all the major advertising channels. I've worked with influencers that have 20 million followers. I've worked with billion-dollar fund managers. I've worked with software companies that raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And I've also worked with small family-owned local businesses. And without further ado, let's get into the topic of the video, which is how we're going to take you from $0 to $10,000 per month, okay? The biggest mistake that I made when starting out my career, it took me 3 years to make any money, is I was focused on the e-commerce space, selling physical products. Now, there's two types of businesses. There's service-based businesses and there's product-based businesses. In my opinion, your first business should be a service-based business. It's much more profitable typically. It is much more forgiving than a products-based business. Selling your services, there's no inventory costs, there's no time costs, there's no bulk ordering, there's no inventory that needs to be purchases, there's no warehousing, there's no depreciation expenses. Okay, you have unlimited capacity. Is literally just your time that you're selling, and your time will become increasingly more valuable as you refine your skill set over time. So for that reason, I would narrow your scope of focus to solely focus on service businesses, at least for your first entrepreneurial venture. Product businesses require serious time, money, energy, and upfront injection of capital in order to make them successful typically. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to do the math on what it would take to reach your income goals. If your goal is to make $100,000 per month or $10,000 per month, you need to have a business model that will support that. You need to model somebody else in your space who you've seen successfully use that model to reach the income goal that you want. So for me, I remember a very important milestone that I had wanted to cross for a tremendously long period of time was crossing $50,000 per month in income. And I constantly wrote on my wall that I would need to have between 5 and 10 clients paying on average approximately $5,000 per month. And digital advertising and performance marketing was a service that I knew the marketplace was commanding those prices to somebody that had a reputation that could command results. And at the beginning in Q1 of 2025, I was happy to say that we did cross a $50,000 profit month. So you would have to first ask yourself, what is a product or service that the marketplace is already actively paying a certain fee for? And then what would my cost to deliver on said service be? If it's my time, then realistically, what amount of my time would be required for me to hit my target income goal? Let's say that you want to charge $1,000 per month for a pressure washing service that will take you 4 or 5 hours per week. You'd very quickly reverse engineer the time required for you to hit that income goal required of $10,000 per month. After you've decided what is going to be your product or your service that you're going to deliver to the marketplace, you've done the math and reverse engineered your goal to know exactly what number of units would be required and need to be sold in order to hit that income goal. The next piece of advice that I would give to my younger self is to study the theory of constraints. Theory of constraints is a very simple phenomenon that occurs in business as well as other areas of life, and it basically says that a system will grow until it is constrained by something. Meaning if you're a 10 out of 10 on product and delivery, if you're a 10 out of 10 on sales, but if you are a 0 out of 10 on marketing, the business will become a 0 out of 10. The marketing has become a constraint to the business. A business will continue to grow until it is constrained by some force. Either it cannot generate new leads, it cannot convert those opportunities into business, or it cannot deliver on and retain those customers. And some businesses are constrained by demand. When we are marketers, we are creating demand, we are creating awareness for our product. They are demand constrained. Some businesses are supply constrained, meaning they have so much work, but so little time to fulfill on said service. In order to grow, you need to address the true constraint of the business and not the thing that you actually enjoy doing in the business. It means you must encounter and embrace your weakness, your deficit that is actively stopping that business from growing. One of the analogies that I like to give to some of my younger consulting clients is when I was playing college tennis. Back in the day, I was trying to become a professional tennis player. Injuries and a bit of a lack of talent prevented me from being able to do that, but 10 years of my life was spent in pursuit of that sport, okay? And what I came to realize later, after I heard this theory of constraint, long after my career had ended in tennis, was that I realized that I had spent years and years of my pro tennis career pursuing things that were not the constraint in my game, so to speak. So what did that mean? Well, my serve, let's just say it was an 8 out of 10 relative to the Division I college tennis team that I was playing on. Let's say my serve was an 8 out of 10. My forehand was a 8 out of 10. Okay, I would say my volleys were an 8 out of 10. But I had one large constraint, and that was my backhand, ironically. Okay, I would have rated my backhand for relative to other Division I college tennis players as about a 2 out of 10. Now, what do you think my level was relative to where I wanted to be? Well, it was about a 3 or a 4 out of 10. Okay, it wasn't quite a 2 out of 10, but I would say it was about 3 or 4 out of 10 relative to where I wanted it to be, relative to what was needed for me to achieve the goals that I wanted to have. And what do you think that I would want to practice when I would go out to the practice court? Do you think that I wanted to hit more backhands and remind myself of this inadequacy? No, I wanted to hit more serves and forehands and reinforce this feeling, this sense of pride that I had and I developed in these other areas, okay? And what I found is once I entered into the business world, I saw business owners doing the same thing. They loved product. They loved design. They loved setting up their new website and making the pixels and the coding everything to make it absolutely perfect. However, I asked them one simple question: has a customer ever turned you away because the business wasn't unprofessional? And they would answer no. But they love and they enjoyed web design. I had one business partner at one point in my career. He spent 2 years perfecting and polishing his website while his bank account was slipping to zero because he was unwilling to confront this problem of marketing and sales. Nobody knew that his business existed. He couldn't create awareness. He couldn't generate new leads, and he couldn't convert those into business opportunities. When you are focusing on something that is outside of the current constraint, when I was hitting serves, when I was hitting forehands, if I moved my serve from an 8 to a 9 out of 10, I was just increasing the potential, but my level of play as a whole, blended across all those other skill sets, was not raising because I still had this one thing that was constraining my growth. You are only as strong as your weakest link. Now, in the beginning, typically the first thing that is constraining any new business owner is marketing. Nobody knows that your product exists. You need marketing. That is the first constraint in order to be able to sell. If you don't have new opportunities every single day that are hunting you down, that are interested in working with you, that are reaching out to you, you have a problem. You need to learn marketing. Now, when I was trying to penetrate the online digital marketing industry, I started with 3 paths in order to get my first few clients. Number 1 is I started with outreach. Okay, outreach is cold calling, cold emailing, cold DMs, direct mail. Okay, and I was very unsuccessful. We're going to talk about shortly why I think that was, but that was the first method that I tried to get clients. The second option that you have is content. Okay, that is creating valuable content like this on the internet with the hopes that the organic platforms distribute that to a wider audience, which in then turns hopefully brings you opportunities, leads, and customers. And then the last option that you have to acquire new customers is paid advertising spend, spending money artificially to boost and force the reach across these other advertising platforms and hope that you can collect more cash than you invested into paid spend. I started with outreach and I spent several months reaching out to prospective business owners, trying to generate my first client, to generate my first opportunity in the space. And it was incredibly difficult. I pride myself on somebody that has a somewhat reasonably decent skill set, presenting the ability to articulate myself well in front of business owners. But the problem with cold outreach is that you are losing frame, meaning when you are the one chasing down business, reaching out to people, your status is typically dropping in their eyes, which typically communicates to the other prospect that he doesn't have much leverage, much power in the negotiations, and it makes the sales process very difficult. Now, conversely, with paid advertising spend and content strategies like this, I have hundreds of new opportunities that reach out to my business on a daily basis, wanting to work to me, and they're coming to me. And what that does is you have frame, you have status, you have a little bit more control over the sales process, over the negotiation process, because you've now created a system that creates inbound lead flow. It's very, very difficult to sell when you're in this lower status position of reaching out to business owners and begging for new business. Now, if I was going to do outreach over again, I still believe I could get my business to $10,000 a month doing that. I would use a concept that I heard Eddie Malouf talk about, who's the owner of Bad Marketing. He wants to outreach in the way that is the least common. So for instance, at the bottom of that period, the most amount of people are cold emailing. I, for my digital marketing agency, probably receive 30 to 50 cold emails per day asking people that are wanting to work with me. And for that reason, I become numb to it. I become banner blind to it. It's very unlikely that I'll do business with one of those vendors, except for my email marketer, Arista. He's incredible. He did convert me, so to speak, by sending me a cold video pitch, but it was incredible. It was very tailored to myself and my business. At the bottom of the outreach period that is the most common is something like cold emailing. The next option that you have above that is actually cold calling. Now in 2025, believe it or not, it's very rare that somebody would have the gumption to reach out to a prospect, pick up the phone, dial them, make themselves vulnerable, and put in that level of effort. The few amount of cold calls that I did got me 10 times more business than I was getting when I was doing cold emailing, cold DMs. And if you go even one layer above cold calling, maybe if you decide to go to somebody's business, go to their office, show up in person, now you might only be competing against a few people versus if you're cold emailing, you might be competing against hundreds and hundreds of people. So that's how I'd be thinking how I could stand out in an outreach setting, even though it's incredibly difficult. If you want to go even a layer above that, you could mail physical items to somebody's office to get their attention. These would be the methods that I would use to differentiate myself if I was trying to drum up new business from scratch. But with all that being said, I still prefer paid advertising spend or content because I want to have more frame. I want to be seen as this person with higher status going into that sales negotiation. Now that we're left with content and paid advertising spend, let's talk about the pros and cons of each. The benefit of content in something like this, a video like this that you're watching here, is that content is very much evergreen, it's very consistent, it's very stable, and it's very predictable. This video that I am making now can continue to get reached, continue to be pushed by the organic platforms for years and years on end. I have a client who has videos that were posted 10 years ago that are still generating him business today in 2025. However, the equal and opposite force of this content strategy is that it takes a long time for things to get going. It can sometimes take months or even years to get your first few thousand subscribers and start generating real business from content. The last option that you have is paid advertising spend. And this is my specialty. This is how I built my entire career. And this is how I actually got my first handful of agency clients, is spending my own money to reach out to business owners, to get connected with them, to book meetings on my calendar. The benefit of paid advertising spend is that if you do it properly, you can start spending at 8 a.m. on Monday and receive meetings by lunchtime that same day. Okay, so it works very, very quickly. Now, the risk is that you are fronting capital. You've now moved to the top of the pyramid where only a 0.1% of people and business owners are willing and have the funds required to start buying reach, to start putting themselves out there. So you're already differentiating yourself by just having some disposable capital to get your message out there. The reason that I chose paid ads to get to my first $10,000 month is because I heard Alex Hormozi's concept of the rule of 100. And what he talked about is that you can choose, if you want to get new customers, you can do 100 minutes of content every single week. You can spend $100 a day on paid advertising spend, or you can do 100 outreaches per day. And what I realized is that for me to do 100 outreach attempts per day, it would take me about 4 or 5 hours. And then what I realized consequentially is that I actually got a second job. I was a part-time tennis instructor, okay, where I was making $75 an hour. And it was easier for me to teach that tennis lesson, get the money to then reinvest in the paid advertising spend. I had to burn that money several times over until I cracked paid advertising spend, until I got the right person on the phone. I had the right script, the right messaging to be able to convert that person. But it was much, much easier for me to earn that money, to spend it on paid advertising spend, than it was for me to do the manual outbound required, the 100 dials per day, the 100 emails per day, the 100 DMs per day, the 100 in-person meetings. That was very, very, very difficult for me to do. Now, what that looked like for me in a practical sense is that I had a full-time job at the time as a media buyer, where I was making between $4,000 and $5,000 per month. My cost to live in Los Angeles was also $4,000 or $5,000 per month, so I was essentially breaking even. I wasn't saving any money. And then weekends from 9 to 5, I was able to earn an additional $2,000 to $3,000 per month teaching these tennis lessons, and that gave me the amount of money and the funds required to start spending $100 per day on paid advertising spend. With my new consulting clients, I always ask them, what is the spread? What is the delta between your current income and your current living expenses, okay? If there is a spread that exists, the likelihood that you're able to break out of the rat race is tremendously higher. If there's no spread, if there's no delta and discrepancy between those two, you are then trapped in that space forever, okay? When I had a $120,000 a year annual corporate job, I knew that I was miserable. I knew that I was unhappy. I knew that I wanted freedom. So I knew that there had to be some difference in what I was spending each month, some delta there, so that I could reinvest into my business, so that I could reinvest into my career and where I wanted to be 5-10 years from now. What I wish that I had done is I wish that I would have lived at home on $1,000 or $2,000 per month, and then I could have freed up all my additional time that I was spending coaching and teaching tennis lessons, but still had that $3,000 to $4,000 per month to start spending money every single day on paid advertising spend and generate awareness for my product or service. So if you're watching this right now, ask yourself, how could I get my current income above my current expenses by at least $2,000 or $3,000 per month, so that I can break free and I can start having $100 a day to invest into my career? Because I promise you, if you're investing $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 per month into your education, into your promotion, I promise you that you will grow and that you will very quickly exceed the amount of income that you're making from your business than you would otherwise from your job. Because the cost for alternative education is so much lower relative to what those skills actually earn you in the marketplace than compared to something like a traditional education, where you're paying $50,000, $100,000 for something that has no practicality, no real use case in everyday life. I've bought courses that were $2,000, $1,500, $400. Most recently, the most one that I can think of is I paid $400 for a course that just last month made me $20,000. That's a 20x return on over a 6-month period. And that information that I acquired is something that I'm going to be reusing over and over and over again for the rest of my career and carrying it with me for the rest of my career. So it's very unlikely that if you were to invest a serious sum of money, a few $1,000s per month, that you wouldn't start hitting your income goals and really growing quickly. You want to hunt and find for people online that have the lifestyle, that have the business that you want, and you want to pay them anything that you can to get in front of them to model their business model, their strategy, and try and model their actions, the inputs that got them to the place that they're at now. The online course seller space gets an incredibly bad rap, and there's a lot of bad actors in that space. I think it's justified. However, what I don't think it's talked about enough is just how negative and how bad the traditional education system is that puts people in debt. You can't bankrupt yourself out of them, and you don't learn real skill sets. I'm a huge, huge fan of alternative education. Every single month, I'm paying several $1,000s per month towards mentors that have agencies that are far bigger, far more successful than mine, so that I can pay down my ignorance debt and compress their decades of experience into sometimes a few hours of a course or a consultation. Right now in this phase of my career, I'm typically not investing quite as much on courses. I'm investing in mentorships, people that can look at my situation and tell me what mistakes that I'm making and what is required to take me from where I am now to the next level. Now, if you are able to carve out that $1,000 per month, $700 a month, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per month in money that you can play around with to start to learn paid advertising spend, in the beginning, you're going to lose a lot of that. You want to set your expectations very low that you're not going to be successful for some period of time, especially if this is your first time advertising. And the skill sets that you need to build are learning how to write great ad copy, have really good headlines, build great landing pages, collect applications, add friction to those applications, qualifying questions, learn how to set up a pixel, learn how to set up a web page, okay? Reach out to those leads, set appointments, and close deals. That's all going to be a big learning curve. But if you're somebody that is willing to learn, you can absolutely start to make paid advertising spend profitable within sometimes your first, second, or even sometimes your third month of doing it, okay? And that is a big deal because once you have that winning ad to the winning landing page to the winning messaging, sometimes those ads can run for years and years on end in print money. You can create a system that puts $1 in, gets $3, $4, $5 out for an extended period of time. I remember for me, when I first created that little delta, that little spread that gave me a $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 per month budget to spend on paid advertising spend, the first month I blew it all, the second month I blew it all, and then that third month I acquired a customer that paid me $2,500 per month for 18 months. And the case study that I generated from that deal and from that opportunity allowed me to have 7 or 8 clients just 6 months after that. On the subsequent sales calls that I had, I spoke with a different level of conviction, a different level of nuance, a different level of depth because I'd gone through that extensive 18-month process with that first client that I ever had, and we added an additional $70,000 per month in recurring revenue to his business. And that is what gave me the confidence to be able to speak to a business owner confidently and tell them that I could help them and that my fee of $2,000, $3,000, sometimes $5,000 per month at a time was justified. So again, if I had to recap everything that we just talked about to go from $0 to $10,000 per month starting out again, I would say number one is choose a service-based business over a product-based business. I was devastated when I had spent a year of my life working for $10 an hour to save $10,000 that I then invested into e-commerce, physical goods, products, and mentorship, all to have that gone in a matter of 30, 60, 90 days. It took me a very, very long time to recover from that financial mistake. You want to think of services as high margin, which means lots of profit and also high margin for error. Most of my friends that run large e-commerce companies operate at between a 5 and 15% net margin, meaning if something changes, they have a 15% margin for error, they start working to lose money. Okay, and that is the danger and both the benefit of entrepreneurship is you're exposed to high amounts of risk and high amounts of upside. Okay, and if you give yourself some margin there and you choose a service-based business, your downside is much, much lower than if you choose and work with a product-based business. Then number two is select a business and a business model and a product offering that can realistically get you to $10,000 per month. That could be pressure watching. That could be trash collection. What you need to do is you need to look at what is a reasonable market rate that I could charge for the service, how long would it take me to fulfill on said service, and then how long before I would cap out. Do the money math in your head, do the back of napkin math to see what amount of products, what amount of services and contracts and clients would I need to sign in order to hit my income goal. Then you need to commit to Alex Hormozi's rule of 100. You need to choose content, outreach, or paid ads. If it was me personally, I think it would be easier for me to just drive Uber, make $20, $30 per hour, work 3 hours at night driving to then have that $100 a day to invest into paid advertising spend so that I have the luxury of having somebody come to me as opposed to reaching out to them. Or you can choose to reduce your living expenses by $2,000, $3,000 per month and take that delta, take that free cash flow, invest into paid advertising spend. One of the biggest regrets that I have in my life is I probably spent 2 to 3 additional years in corporate America that I could have avoided had instead of buying a beautiful beachfront apartment in Santa Monica for $2,800 per month, had I just continued to live at home for 1, 2, 3 more years, maybe my dating life would have suffered. But that additional amount of money, investing $100 a day into paid advertising spend, it's very unlikely that you would not generate a customer, generate your first client, and start having a return on that investment within the first couple months. Okay, now that the big caveat there is that is with the oversight of somebody like myself or another mentor that you would choose to work with who can guide you and help you to craft a winning message, a winning copy, winning headline, making sure that you're quickly iterating on the feedback that you're getting from the marketplace as you start to spend money on these paid advertisements. So that is pretty much everything that I have for you. Now, if you are watching this in your business doing more than $100,000 per month, even though I don't know why you'd be watching this, but if you're doing more than $100,000 per month, I would love to talk to you about helping your business scale by adding on paid acquisition. If you're already spending big on Meta or Google or LinkedIn, LinkedIn. Let us work with you to not just optimize that existing channel, but maybe talk to you about adding some additional channels that will provide you some diversification, stability, and also tap into additional markets, additional opportunities to scale your business, not just on one platform. And then if you're doing less than $100,000 per month, I have a mentorship program where you can work directly with me, work with my team to get your questions answered, and help you build a business that could ultimately be a good fit to work with my agency down the road. So if that's interesting to you, there's a link in my description where you can apply to work with me. It will ask you a few questions. We'll ask you a little bit about your revenue, where you currently are, what you're looking for help with, and we'll try and make sure that you're pointed in the right direction. And if that's not with me, I'll happily refer you to somebody else that would be a good fit to help you. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you wouldn't mind liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you do that and you send me a screenshot proving me that you did those 3 things, you'll be entered into a contest to win a year-long personalized one-on-one consulting with me, where I'll be taking a handful of people from $0 to $10,000 per month. That's like a fun little side project for me. So if you'd like to enter into that contest to win that opportunity to work with me for free, that would normally be a multiple 5-figure investment. You get that completely for free. All you need to do is like, comment, and share the video below, and you'll be entered into that giveaway. That's everything I have for you. Thanks so much for your time. Hope you found the business valuable, and I'll talk to you soon.